Welcome to She the People's Online Safety Summit. We live in a world where all of us are seduced by technology. In a given room, most of us would believe that Google is the most intelligent person. But sadly, we have all come face to face with the dark side of the web. People lie, cheat, abuse, troll others using the anonymity. For Wimix, this is particularly bad. Today we are here to discuss making the internet safer for Wimix. We have with us Ruchi Makkad, who is the founder of Makkskills. Ruchi is a serial entrepreneur. She has conducted sessions for over 3,000 people, including students and educators. Mayank Mukherjee is an advocate at the Delhi High Court. Sakthisree is a One Future Fellow for 2020 and a machine learning engineer and intersectional feminist who is passionate about looking at data through the lens of justice and intersectionality. We also have with us Prerna Sinha, founder of MaaOfAllBlogs, who is a mother of two boys, a foodie, a travel enthusiast, a shopaholic, and a newly minted fitness seeker. Well, I welcome you all, and I would like to begin this conversation by first asking Ruchi about what are the kind of changes that you've witnessed in e-learning during this pandemic.
Hi Deepshikha, that's a great question to start with. So honestly, the lockdown, which has been pretty much most of 2020, so lockdown, physical distancing, travel restrictions have made e-learning a necessity this year, much more that we've had in any of the years. So we at Makkskills have seen a dramatic change in the way e-learning has been. It's been the need of the hour of the pandemic, having trained about over thousands of teachers to be able to teach online and impart their education to students has been something we've seen, very urgently. Everyone's churned into, everyone sort of adapted to that in a very, very quick way because, honestly, in March, we were just suddenly left with no choice. So the number of enrollments we've had, even from small towns across India, and including places in JNK where there's 2G network and the speeds are very slow. Teachers have joined us from there and said we need to understand how are we teaching, grading, testing, everything online, because the show must go on. So there's been a drastic change in that way, of course. And I think I'm sure from this year onwards, even after the vaccine, hopefully soon, will come to a lot of us. We're going to continue to do some kind of teaching online because it's sort of changed the way we have children are learning and teachers are teaching from across cities and countries for that matter. So education has dramatically changed with a huge rise in e-learning.
So, Prerna, I would like to come to you and ask about your experiences as an influencer. How has the pandemic changed the influencer marketing?
Hi, Deepshikha. So, when it happened in March, where everybody was locked down, now usually we go out for events and we share about that on our profiles, on our stories, even on our pages. So that was not happening anymore. So we had to look at content in a very different way. And especially for certain people like travel influencers, it became very difficult to put out content because nobody wanted to see anything around travel because everybody was locked inside. So there were many different aspects, but I think as a parenting influencer and as a fitness influencer, it worked in my favor because I was giving them solutions on what to do, how I am passing time, what can I teach my children while I'm inside, how can I keep them engaged. And as a fitness influencer, I was putting out more yoga videos and everything every day. In fact, I did a 21 days yoga live with the first 21 days when the lockdown happened, which I had never done, because somebody said, why don't you do yoga for us? And it became a thing. And after that, I actually started teaching online on Fraternity and other platforms. So it changed a lot for me, and I think it changed in a positive way because initially we didn't know where this was going, but we used it to our advantage. And I think the first 3 months, even with brands that we were working with, they didn't know which direction this was going. But after the 3 months was over, I think we got a lot more. Most influencers actually are working more because people are absorbing more data on digital, and people are spending more times on their phones, so they want more content. uh, so we are creating more content, and digital has become the way for brands as well. So I feel this way, at least for influencers, it's been very beneficial.
Right. So I'll also ask you here about something you shared about online harassment, where
Yes,
your image was cropped and used in a
yes,
inappropriate manner.
yes.
So tell us about that, a bit about your experience.
Yeah, so this is about 1 or 2 years back, where there was this person who was actually harassing a lot of women on Twitter, and I realized that while I don't post too many pictures on Twitter, I had posted a few, and what he did was he cropped a certain part of my body and he used it in some very lewd blog, which I wasn't aware about. But somebody on my Twitter followers saw it and he sent it to me, and then I realized, that it was not only me that he was doing it to. There was a group of women that he was doing this to, and he was very discreet in the way he used to do it. So he would do it in a way that when we reported his profile, when you go to his profile, you couldn't see anything. So he was going in the comments and leaving trolling people, trolling women in general, and writing lewd comments and all. And so we decided, we formed a group of women, we formed a group, and we decided to take it on. So everybody put in their complaints, but since it was directly he had used my picture, so I went to the cybercrime office and I told them this has happened. And they said, we can only register your complaint, we can take whatever has come into consideration, but we will register your complaint. And then I had to go to a local police station, file a proper FIR, go through the process, but they finally found the guy and they shut his account. And yeah, so he was off Twitter, and I think that was a great victory for all of us. Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to take that comment because I wanted to go to Shree for my next question, which is, what is digital violence? As the access to digital is increasing, a lot of women initially may not even be conscious about that what they're coming face to face is abuse or violence which needs to be reported. So, how do you think, in terms of, I mean, what is your experience with data, and how do you think we can make women more aware, women's more aware, people more aware about these potential threats?
Yes. So maybe to start off with the first question, what is digital violence? So the first thing that I could think of is the characteristics of the digital space, right? So one of the major characteristics of the digital space is anonymity, authority, and attention. And because of that, it gives many the ease of access to commit abuse and violence online. So for me, digital violence or online violence is abuse that is directly aimed at perhaps threatening the fundamental human rights of a person, especially the right to equality, right to life, and the right to freedom of expression. And of course, there are many forms of digital violence, some of this being threat of violence, which can either be direct or indirect threats of physical or sexual violence. It could be violations of privacy, discrimination, online harassment, impersonation, exclusion, stalking, and so on. So I mean, I think we all know that the internet is sort of an incredible tool, because at the same time, it has given empowered women to speak up, to organize against the face of oppression and patriarchy. But at the same time, of course, the internet is not such a safe haven wherein only good things happen, right? So, as a matter of fact, there's been an Amnesty International report that sort of found out that women of color, women with disabilities, the LGBTQIA plus community, and oppressed societies at the intersection are even more targeted. And one of the reasons this sort of happens is because of very little accountability that's often placed on these attackers. So a lot of times these abusers or attackers kind of get away easily with what they do, mostly because there isn't such strict, serious safeguards placed in these digital platforms. And also due to a lack of knowledge or awareness, not amongst just the individuals, but perhaps also lack of serious awareness in these tech companies or huge platforms themselves. And a lot of times this sort of leads to women to self-censor, to restrict their freedom of expression, and it also sort of restricts their meaningful participation online. So for me, when it comes to how do we curb this issue, I can boil it down to sort of three things. One being awareness or sensitization, the second being putting up safeguards, and the third, sanctions themselves. So when it comes to sensitization, I feel like it needs to happen in sort of 3/4 layers. The first layer being the individual themselves. So for instance, I need to it is also my duty to go and empower myself with the knowledge of how I can defend myself online, right? But I feel like this is only as effective if my community has sort of collectives that help me with this, or provide support groups for me in the case of violence that I may or may not face. And that becomes the second layer. So the second layer becomes then the community. And then the third or fourth, I would say that the government and sort of the big tech companies sort of come in the same layer, due to the tech companies exercising a lot of power these days. So I feel like it's also up to these two bodies to also sort of put in very serious governance, very serious policies around how such platforms are moderated in terms of content, in terms of the sort of procedures that they keep in place for someone to report abuse and get it done. So a lot of times what I've sort of seen, and some of my friends have faced, is that it takes quite some time for a particular account to be closed, or sometimes the survivors themselves find it hard to figure out a way to report these. So I feel like setting up a more easily accessible procedures in place can also sort of empower people to come forth more and sort of report such abuses that may occur online. And I mean, I have to talk about this because very recently there was I don't know, so there's this World Wide Web Foundation, and they had this sort of series of consultations where they brought forth these tech companies and women from across civil societies to share their experiences of tackling online gender-based violence. So for those who don't know, the World Wide Web Foundation, it was basically established in 2009 by, of course, the web inventor himself, Sir Tim Berners-Lee and Rosemary Leith. And their main vision was to advance the open web as a public good and basic right. So in this sort of series of consultation that happened, there were sort of 7 key takeaways from it. I'm not going to go over through the whole 7 key takeaways, but the 3 most intriguing and I feel like the most important ones were the fact that the first one being that online violence can cause offline harms. So whatever I face online is not going to be restricted to just the boundaries of the mobile or the laptop through which I sort of face the abuse, right? Like for instance, women activists are often targeted with abuse outside as well, which often sort of traumatizes them in emotional distress. And the second key takeaway that was pretty interesting was that these forms of content moderation on these tech platforms are not enforced equally. So according to the civil society participants in this series of consultations that took place, they sort of talked about how tech companies focus their resources more on the global north rather than the global south. So there was sort of like a series enforcement gap between the abusive content of the global north and the global south. And for instance, participants described experiences and witnessing companies sanctioning feminists and racial justice advocates for calling out hate speech and abuse, but perpetrators of hate were sanctioned less frequently. And then the third most interesting thing for me is the importance of cultural context in these tech platforms. So for instance, if you want to make good decision on what should be put down, what accounts should be removed, or what actions to address problematic content, I feel like tech companies and these platforms really need to understand cultural context, because whatever is applied to the global north cannot be completely applied to worldwide as well as the global south as well. Like for instance, there was a participant in the same series who talked about how in her or in their conservative country, a picture of an unmarried woman standing next to a man could lead to dangerous consequences. But in a general sense, this is not something that would probably violate a platform's policy, right? But these things have sort of led to cases of women being blackmailed online due to the cultural context set in place in that particular country. So I feel it's super important for tech companies to also sort of understand the cultural complexities and nuance, especially in the face of oppression. And I feel like, we really need to also take into consideration the whole global south context as well. So these were the three key takeaways from it. And
Yeah. So
if I were, yeah, you
yeah, so
had to say.
I'll just like to have take some comments from Mayank on this. So Mayank, who is an advocate, so we would like to know from Mayank what you think about 2020. So 2020, the year has been a year of great digital learning in terms of everything going online. So probably a learning which would have otherwise been achieved over a period of 6 to 8 years has been crunched into all these months. So do you think in retrospect there are going to be pitfalls? There are going to be legal implications. There are going to be issues which are going to come up and need to be addressed.
Firstly, hi. Thank you, Deep and SheThePeople, for having me here. Uh, Taking into consideration what you're saying, that the learning has been uh, concentrated within a few months as compared to a larger period of time, the problems have always been there. It is not as if some new problems are going to come up, but the scale is going to change completely. So what you will need is better cyber policing. What you will need is a better sensitized law enforcement agency, which can actually take up these cases, deal with them faster. What you will need are dedicated people who are cyber warfare experts, who are hackers, who are white hat hackers, who can actually come and help these law enforcement agencies to actually bring the perpetrators to book. I'm sure when Prerna went and found these people, she was extremely lucky, because it usually takes a large amount of time from the complaint actually being made and the complainant being made to go through many hoops before the content is actually taken down. Now that has to be reduced, because as the scale increases, the amount of humiliation that the person undergoes, the amounts of the number of problems, the number of people who actually view the content keeps increasing. One
Yeah.
thing we must realize is that nothing on the internet can ever be scrubbed. I mean, we say it, but it is not practically possible. So, as far as people are concerned, I mean, I just have two things to say: that there are certain harms which are self-generated, which at a later point of time can cause you problems, right? Stay away, especially for teenagers. Most of the problems that you see that teenagers face with regard to sexual violence, online harassment, etc., is sending a photo which should not have been sent, taking a video which should not have been taken, and we forget the fact that in the moment it might be really nice to do whatever we are doing, it may be really fun, but no one at that age is mature enough to handle the consequences. uh, a case in point being that even people who are in the, let's say, the pornographic industry don't know what they're getting into. Mia Khalifa recently turned around and said that she wanted her videos, which she had been paid for and were legally made, to be taken down, because now she had become a sportscaster, and she said that I made 5 videos for $500 each, and companies have made millions of dollars out of them. I have received nothing, but my reputation has gone. So now, even in the US, there is this entire concept of active consent for these videos of which depict women in, let's say, the pornographic industry, where it is essentially, consent has already been taken, versus places where consent has not been taken, and sexual violence is being perpetrated upon women. So, as that is one side of the problems which may occur. The other side are, when someone is out to get you. So, for example, celebrities, bloggers like Prerna, where morphed images are there. It's the act of pure malice. There is nothing that you can actually do to protect yourself at that juncture, because you are doing whatever you are within the public space, and you are entitled to it without any issues. But this one person comes up and says that, as a troll, or it's going to be fun, or I'll get likes. There are many, or vicarious thrills. There are many reasons why people do this. So it is not as if we don't have the laws to deal with it. The Information and Technology Act has various different provisions dealing with morphing of pictures, dealing with impersonation, dealing with acts of sexual violence. uh, the problem comes when it comes down to the actual enforcement. So what we are actually looking for in the next few years is possibly dedicated cyber cells with actual teeth, which can actually bring these perpetrators to book. Another thing which I would like to tell your viewers about is the fact that the it's not as if the government is also just sitting around. So there is a uh, bill which has been done, which is known as the PDP bill, or the Personal Data Protection Bill, which for the first time has recognized something known as statutorily known as the right to forget. So once this bill comes into place, you will have the option to go to an authority and say that this data is causing me harm or is inflicting harm upon me, and then go forward and have that data removed on an immediate basis without going to court.
Okay.
Even today, if you want any data removed from the internet, you have to move court. It is not as if the court won't do it. They also find the guy, they also find the laptop, they also find various places where he may have hidden it, his cell phones. They go through it, but it's an extremely slow and arduous process. So a
Yeah.
faster process is being brought into play, and hopefully in the next year or two, we will have an authority where people like Prerna can go and say that this is giving me significant harm, this is causing me humiliation, this is an act of sexual violence, or this is an act of harassment, and it should be taken off, and then the authority can decide. So in certain cases, where there are hard cases where there is a clear cut understanding of sexual violence, or there's a clear cut understanding that this is harming the reputation of someone and is not based on any fact, then in those cases the authority will take, hopefully, a fast and efficacious remedy, and give you the relief that you need. However, there is a problem with certain things, I believe, wherein Sakti has pointed out, wherein there is online harassment, wherein there is online bullying. So we have laws for these, but the issue which arises herein is that what is harassment, what is bullying? If someone comes and turns around and is not abusive, and is yet demeaning to a person or their caste or creed or someone in a particular manner, which might be racist but is not illegal, will you still remove it? Which is the entire conversation which is going on in the US today, where the conservatives are saying that, hey, our speech is speech as well. You cannot remove it from, let us say, Facebook, or you cannot remove it from, let us say, Google, merely because a certain section of the population has a problem with it, or doesn't like it. So these are issues which are slightly more difficult to deal with, because I believe, these are free speech issues which will have to be taken on a case to case basis, and one will have to see where society moves before
Yeah.
these can be dealt with, because it's a very societal issue, and
Correct.
the law can only do so much with regard to it. It can provide the protection, but the line and the distinction has to be drawn by society at some level. And
So
and the, yes,
yeah, so I would like to take Ruchi's comments on this, since she is dealing with the younger lot of kids. She is teaching people who are way younger, who are getting into designing courses, and who will be. So there's a responsibility of. So what are the pitfalls of digital learning when you're teaching children? Because from now on, the way education is going to get imparted, we believe it's going to change drastically in the coming years. So as a teacher,
Yeah, that
as an what are your thoughts on that?
The biggest drawback, while it has a lot of advantages, e-learning is made it simpler in many ways. The biggest disadvantage, I would say, and I would put it right on top of the list, would be social isolation. And I think that I don't think ever before in any other years we've understood or given so much importance to the need of social interaction because we've taken it for granted. And in this year, we've realized that a lot of children are actually, when they're sitting at home, especially, a lot of people who have one child, are feeling the social isolation in a much bigger way. And I think that e-learning that's the biggest disadvantage of e-learning because a lot of children are actually feeling absolutely the children are going through mood swings. They don't know how to tackle it because it's a new world for them, and while adults we all can speak up and share our thoughts and try and do something to cheer ourselves up. Children are unable to speak, and I'm talking about children who are, today nursery school is also happening online to learn ABC or to, to hold a ball. It's very different. The whole experience to be in a playground, the touch and feel is absolutely gone. So I would say the being with another child, be it young or be it a sixth grader or 10th grader, it's very, very hard. So social isolation would be, I would say, the biggest pitfall. Also, the online format, the student feedback is extremely limited. Of course, there are loads of programs that sort of help you with the forms and feedback forms, but I think that how the interaction between a teacher and a student happens in a classroom. As many programs have come up to be able to do that. There's so many programs that make the whole conversation easier. There are interesting games that have come up, dice roll and so many other kinds of picker wheels to make it interesting. But while I think there are just elements that we're trying to improve the way we're teaching online, but nothing matches physical format. Also, it also spoils the whole communication in terms of there's lack of communication development. Because the communication is extremely casual and extremely to the point. You want to listen a lot more to the teacher. Conversations between children can't happen because it's disturbing for the teacher on an online platform. But if you bring out a conversation, be it about a play or a maths problem, and everyone's sort of interacting and talking, there's a lot of learning from others. All that I think really adds up. Of course, in India we do tend to have a lot of technical issues also, to be honest, with somebody's internet going on and off slowly here and there. But I would say primarily, the e-learning really spoils the whole social gamut for learning.
So, yeah, so from e-learning to social media, I mean, kids are getting exposed to internet, whether we like it or not. Their access to social media is at a very early age, I would say. So I'll go to Prerna to take some comments on as an influencer. Today kids want to be influencer, this quick success, this 2-minute video which is going to get viral and all. So, Prerna, I would like to ask you, as an influencer's lifestyle is not picture perfect as it seems on screen on their videos. So, you're a mother also. What would you tell to other parents whose children want to be influencers?
Hi. So before I get into that, I just wanted to put one more point on what I had discussed earlier. That while I went and did all this with the cybercrime office and I got it sorted, it took me a lot of time to even figure out what is the right way to go and do this. Because when I had complained to Twitter, as Mayank rightly put it, they did not shut his account because I got a mail saying that we don't see any violations happening. So this was difficult, and I had never been even to a police station ever, and I had these fears and thought processes in my head. So it took me a lot of conditioning, getting out of that conditioning, to actually go and write a complaint. And I was very worried, but actually the police was very helpful. They were very they put me at ease. A police lady police constable officer was there. She put me at ease, and a guy also was also there. They talked about it. They made me calm. They gave me their personal numbers, so they actually really helped. And while it took like 2-3 months to get this sorted, I think it was I want to just tell the women out there that if you are facing any harassment, please don't think about it twice. Police is not all that scary, and and the cybercrime does help, but you will have to get out of that zone and go and complain, because that I think a lot of women let go. They don't want to do it. So that point being put, I'll come to the question that you had asked me, that as a influencer, what you see on my page is obviously a side of life that I want to show to you. And usually if you come to my page, you will always see everything positive. There's a fitness video that goes up every day. There are these happy times that I'm having with my kids. And of course, the stories are a little more real, but again, I don't show too much of my kids. And this experience with cybercrime has made me even more worried about exposing too much about my life online. So I'm very careful about what I show, what I don't show. Usually it's only the side faces. You will never see front faces of my kids, and that also I have to show because I'm a parenting influencer, so I have to get the kids in thing. But I try and do it very discreetly, without making it very obvious. And yeah, so you will never see real time information being shared. So I will never show you that I'm at this place at that particular time. It will always be after I have left that place. Even if I'm traveling, I will never reveal the place till I've left it. So these are the small things that you can take care of, and it's a scary world out there for kids as well. uh, so with the pandemic, of course, all the kids have moved online, and as Mayank said, everything is sped up. So like for example, my 9-year-old, we had to give him a phone because there was no other way that he could chat up with his friends. So we gave him a phone this year during the pandemic, which is not at all something that I approve of generally. But we had no choice. Of course, I'd still monitor how much time he's chatting with his friends, and how much time is he actually using it to watch videos. And the moment one is, of course, what they're watching online, you can always put some parental controls on that. But the moment they go on social media, as Mayank said, that whatever video you might put across can have different implications to different person. Like I see there are these certain influencers who have their kids also with them, and it's probably just a bath time that they're showing. But imagine if my normal picture can be cropped and used lewdly. Imagine there are so many predators online. They can use your child's picture anyway. In fact, I'll tell you one incident, which is not directly related to me, but somebody I know in their office, they had this issue where a couple arrived, and they said your child is actually our child. And they were like, how can that be possible? They had actually taken snippets of all their Instagram pictures, from the time the child was born to the whatever the actual age of the child was, I think 4-5 years that time. And they said, look, we have all the pictures, morphed it with their pictures, and said we are the parents. And these guys, they tried to get in touch with the police, and they couldn't sort it out. They had to pay these guys off to get them off, because that's what they were after. So guys, when you put your kids on social media, be very careful. Teach them the proper norms of things. And like I said, real time, don't put anything real time. Be very careful of the content you put. And of course, do not engage with DMs that sound fishy. I get so many DMs saying that your account has been blocked, and you need to follow this link, otherwise we will close your account. And luckily for me, I have an Instagram manager, so I check with her before I do any action. But these are very, very misleading, and there's a lot of phishing happening. So yeah, with kids, I would say, I personally feel till they're mature enough, till they're 18, please do not let them be on social media.
So, picking up from your point, exposing too much, how much exposing is too much for online? I would like to go to Sakthisree. With companies increasingly trying to understand what the customers want through their browsing habits, does gender preference get homogenized or commoditized while they're building algorithms? Because
Yeah. Personally, I do believe so. So my answer for that is definitely a yes. But as Prerna said as well, and as well as to the extent of information that we give online, right, depends upon the sort of precautions and measures, or even the tools that you choose to use. So for instance, some of the tools that I can talk about that are sort of open source and they're super like privacy related is like DuckDuckGo. And you even have Firefox that sort of, prioritizes privacy over sort of commoditizing your data. So I think it's very important as parents, as, perhaps a legal adult, to be very aware of the tools that we use, to be very aware of the information that we provide to these data platforms. So, a lot of times, I don't know if you realize, in the phones, at times a pop-up comes up saying it needs access to your location, right? So even taking that second to be very aware that they need access to your location makes a huge difference. So you always have the choice to say no. And it's also very important to read through the fine print. I'm a big believer that the terms and conditions need to be in a readable format so everyone can understand what is actually happening. And I think very recently Instagram started doing so. Like a few weeks ago, I saw revised terms and conditions. It made it easier for you to understand. Click on this. So I think it's very important to take mindful steps and decisions on what information will I allow the online community to know about myself, be it my date of birth or email. And every time you go to these sort of sites, right, you have sign up using Google, sign up using Facebook, sign up using LinkedIn. So whenever you sort of like link each of your account to different sites you go, I feel as though perhaps more of your data is being collected by the sites themselves. So it's always advisable to be very aware of the kind of information you provide, and to be very aware of the tools you use. There's a lot of frameworks and information on the internet itself that allows women to protect themselves, as well as setting up like antivirus software in your computer as well as your mobiles, precautions as to what to do if someone hacks your computer. So we do have all these sort of guidelines, and I think it's also, along with awareness on digital violence, I think it's also equally important to create awareness on such tools, such platforms, perhaps even like like Prerna said before. So it takes a bit of time to even know what to do, right, if something happens to you. So it's very important to also have that clearly mentioned out and made aware about as well. So yeah. Deepshikha, you're on mute.
So, talking about what we can do, I would like to go to Mayank, citing recently we all learned that Pornhub purged almost its 80% content after Visa and MasterCard announced they would end payment processing for the site over concerns of illegal content. Do you think a powerful way to root out unverified content which promotes child sexual abuse or revenge porn is freezing the financial channels? Is that's the right way to go about it?
So I have actually comments to make. I'll just first take the question and then I'll move on to something else which has been discussed by the other panelists. Uh, as far as this is concerned, we are talking about two different things. Okay, child porn is a money making business. So yes, financials there do make sense. You if you stop their payments, they will go away. I mean, you don't water the tree will die, right? They will go into the dark web. They will shift to bitcoins or ethereum or something else, but you will be able to keep 80% of the population away from what it is. There's a there's a saying in security that you put a lock not to keep away the 10% of the burglars who will break in, but to keep away the 90% of the burglars who will, after seeing the lock, won't. So keeping it away from mainstream media actually does reduce the scalability or the amount that it can be disseminated. But truly it cannot be stamped out of, let's say, the dark web or other websites such as that, because they have a different forms of payment, etc., etc. But is it a good start? Most definitely yes. should businesses be should payment businesses be socially ethical in terms of ensuring that their modalities cannot be used for illegal purposes? Yes. In fact, that is given in, especially in Indian law, that credit cards, etc., cannot be used for purchasing illegal goods or services. In fact, every single credit card thing that you will read, it says that you will not use it for purchasing illegal goods. So that's one thing. As far as revenge porn is concerned, that's a completely different ballgame. It is not money driven at all. It is driven on humiliation. It is driven on. It is not for the. It is not meant for sale to a public. It is meant to humiliate the person who is there in the video, right?
Right.
So it has got no connection to any financial resources, or it has got no financial meaning. In that case, it would not be possible for, let's say, a financial institution to be able to stop this. But it would be possible for law enforcement agencies to step in at that moment. And as many of the panelists have pointed out, but I will disagree with Sakti on this thing that you can take care of privacy on the internet. Forgive me for being a doomsayer, or talking about it in a very doomsday-like manner. But there is no privacy on the internet. Everything that you put out is recorded, is there. Your phone is not your living room, your laptop is not your living room. If you don't want the public to know, don't put it out. There is nothing called a snap which I have just taken and given. If tomorrow Snapchat gets, which is going to get deleted in 24 hours, it doesn't happen. If tomorrow Snapchat gets hacked, yes, your pictures will come out. Celebrities get hacked all the time. It is not as if your phone or your photos on your phone are secure. The only way to be secure is to know what is public and what is private. And that is what you have to teach your children, and that is what you have to teach the populace, and that is what you have to tell people. Putting up a curated life like Prerna does, and she said that not everything, we are very careful about what we put out. That's good. That's a great start of balancing the act of being an influencer and yet ensuring that I can avoid 90% of the troubles which come my way. So the point is that everything has risk involved. The question is how much risk and how much you can reduce it by your own volition. And I completely agree with Prerna when she says that the police are actually very nice, and you should go to them. You should not be worried about it, especially in cases where you're getting blackmailed or extorted. They are extremely helpful. Uh, it's just a time-consuming process. It's just very, very mentally challenging and agonizing for one to go through it. So it is best if you can, by your own actions, avoid it. Please do. Please be careful about what you put out, but if you need help, etc., it is not as if the government is not doing anything about it. It is not as if the courts don't do anything about it. Recently, even the Odisha High Court, even without the right to be forgotten being enshrined in Indian law, invoked it, and this is the first time a constitutional court in the country has turned around and said that in cases like these of sexual violence, of when photos are being taken, or when photos are being shared, or threats are being made, you're being blackmailed, you're being extorted, the state shall step in and the state shall ensure that all these data operators, Facebook, Google, whoever it may be, who's managing your data, shall scrub the data from their servers and ensure that it does not go forward. Right. So if in these cases, the law does stand up for you, and you should go and take a solid stance, because even one person doing it ensures that the second person can go, and then the third person can go. And not only does the judicial system get more sensitized to it because they see it happen on a daily basis, but the general populace gets sensitized to it, and they know that they can't get away from it. So to all the perpetrators out there, who think that they can get away with it, it is up to us to ensure that there is a very strong message which goes out that no, you can't, and we will take you up on this, and we will ensure that you don't use or abuse a message sent out of love or a photo sent out while we were in a relationship in this manner.
Yeah. So I will have to quickly wrap up now. I will take closing comments from each of you. So making internet safer for women. So Sakthisree, I would like to ask you, to what extent do you think freedom of speech can be regulated in cyberspace?
Honestly, that's a difficult question for me to answer because it's not as easy. And for me, it's always been a question that I ask myself often. So, doing direct content moderation sort of goes against, so it's sort of like surveillance, right? Mass surveillance. And that is sort of violating a fundamental right itself, fundamental right to privacy. So, freedom of speech cannot be moderated in the most straightforward sense, but I believe, at least to me personally, I feel transparency should be a solution here from amongst the tech companies as to how this content moderation often happens. So I believe right now they have like these AI systems in place, like technical bots in place that does this content moderation to an extent. But I also feel that it's important that tech companies are very transparent about what criteria come underneath it, and that they work with governmental bodies to recognize the sort of content that needs to be regularized. And I feel like this is not something new. So we've sort of had censorship in our media before as well, right? So for me, honestly, Deepshikha, that's a very difficult question. And as of now, that's something that I'm trying to find the answer to myself. But I feel like with proper governance, with proper policies in place, we might necessarily not go against the freedom. Like for me, the right to free speech is something that needs to be sort of respected and kept strong without necessarily putting down the voices of those who needs to be heard, right? So I'm hoping that we have these policies that come into place that help with this, to sort of find the balance between what causes harm, what doesn't cause harm, and so on.
Yeah. So, Ruchi, do you believe counter speech can reduce the spite and venom in online discussions?
Yeah, because I think, like, I sort of, when Mayank was talking and saying, whatever he was, talking about how the honest truth about, what's really going on when you put something out there, it really doesn't go. It's scary, but it's the truth. But I would also agree with Shaktishree when she said that it's ideal when you don't link up your accounts. When you don't link one account to the other, and I think that's you always try to do a guest checkout or a guest login as a new person instead of linking your accounts. I think that would be another thing I would personally do, always, to try and keep the online safety you know a little more as safe as one can, with the little knowledge that we have as internet users. um, Sorry, I'm
Fine.
not sure if I answered your question
I'll
though.
just move on to Prerna and ask her about freedom of
Okay.
speech and regulation of freedom of speech in cyberspace.
I don't think you can really regulate freedom of speech, and and I don't even think that counter speech is going to help, because I mean, unless there's somebody really feels the need to explain themselves on why they are countering it, and basically it's just lifts up the issue. You're giving it more visibility. So maybe somebody's missed the first one, but you've given it visibility by going there. But yeah, sometimes we do feel the need to explain. And Yeah, I do feel that, as Sakti said, that some if, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter can actually regulate and come up with better norms to kind of regulate on what is that should be displayed and what should not be displayed. Because I see a lot of these pornographic accounts on different social media, which are just running very easily, whereas I put out something which violates one policy, maybe a music copyright or something which I wasn't aware about, and immediately my video is blocked. So, I don't know how they are managing this. This is something I feel, that needs
We
to be
will ask that
regulated.
answer from Mayank. So, Mayank, your thoughts on freedom of speech and counter role of counter speech?
Before I go there, I'll just explain to Prerna why her music violates the Instagram policies immediately, while pornographic accounts don't. Is the fact that music companies have a lot of money, uh, and they can sue you, they can sue Instagram. Pornographic accounts generate money for Instagram, so it's as simple as that. Because there are more viewers, there are more people coming, there are more ads which are placed. So it's finances, it's nothing else. There's no reason behind it. As far as free speech goes, see, if you want to regulate free speech, then the speech cannot be free. And you've asked about counter speech, etc., etc. There is nothing known as counter speech. There is just speech. Someone will say something, someone will say something against it, and a third person will come and say something against both. That is how it has always been. That is how dialectics have grown. The only question is whether that speech causes harm, whether it is causing harm in society, to the fabric of society, to the morality of society as it exists. Now, as soon as I've said any of those words, a bias has crept in. Because if I'm talking about morality of society, if I'm talking about fabric of society, anyone who wants to change the fabric of society will necessarily have to talk against it. And it will harm the fabric of society, because it will have to be unmade and remade. Anyone who wants to change the morality of society will automatically be changing it in some manner. So the only question is, at this juncture, the fact that where does society see itself go, and what does it consider to be necessary free speech, to be leading it to a positive growth in society, versus a negative free speech which shows that okay, this is going to lead to riots, and it's going to lead to communal disharmony. It is going to lead to a situation wherein the state and sovereignty of the country is under harm, which is what is happening in the US these days, and which is what is happening in India these days, and which is what is happening in France these days. So it is happening across the world. When sometimes it's the state versus let us say, and Islam. Sometimes it is the conservatives versus the liberals. Sometimes it is Hindus versus Muslims. So speech in and of itself, if you start curbing at this juncture, it will always be at the behest of the state. And if you believe that the state is not in your favor, then it is obvious what speech is going to be curbed and which speech is not. I've also heard from the other panelists that it will be nice if Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these tech companies become more aware of what content goes on there, and they start curbing it. So essentially, you are now replacing the state with a private entity, which has its own biases, which will have its own financial considerations to do whatever is required versus what is not required, And as Sakti has also very nicely stated before during this panel, that there is a question of the global north versus the global south. Let us not be under any illusion that these companies are not the global north. They are. Your data is owned by the global north. They are the people who decide what to do with it. They are the people who decide where it goes. So in that situation, a change has started occurring. Facebook has had to face, let's say, parliamentary questions in India. There are legislative questions which are being asked. Even in Delhi, they are being called. In the US, they are being called, and that is happening across. Google is being called. Facebook is being called. All the big data operation companies. Amazon will soon be called. So the governments are trying to get a grip on it, but there is no clear answer, because anyone who curtails or curbs free speech, and I'm not saying it is not necessary to do so, in fact it is necessary to do so in many cases, goes against the antithesis of free speech. As Voltaire said, I don't agree with what you said, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So unless you go that level, that is the only free speech which exists. After that, everything, you are slowly on a slippery slope, and you are giving away your rights to say, okay, harm, okay, state security, okay, XYZ, okay, gender discrimination, okay, racial bias, okay, protecting children, and slowly, and you don't know where you end up, and all
Mayank, I will have to stop you at that
yeah,
because
yeah,
my
absolutely.
producer is sending
Thank
me
you so,
messages.
yeah,
That
thank you
we
so much
will
for
need
having me
to.
here. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you
much for
all of you for making it on such a short notice. Thank you all. I really enjoyed this conversation, and probably we can go on and on, but sadly there's a time limit. And thank you all for
Thank
joining
you
us
so much.
on online stuff
Thank you,
online.
Deepshika.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
very
you all.
interesting.
Thank you.
Pleasure.